Gravity Falls Season 3 is something that's been on every fan's mind lately, mostly because no one knows what Alex Hirsch is cooking. The Book of Bill has thrown so much blatant sequel bait at us that you might actually be crazy if you think it means nothing at all. Disney is investing into brand new animations and lo-fi albums that are hiding codes in plain sight. Half of the internet is convinced Season 3 is already happening, to the point where my TikTok feed might be tapped into a different reality, and the other half is convinced Season 3 is never happening. Apparently, McGuckin's computer thinks Season 2 is Season 3, and what's this about a Season -1? There's so much going on. A lot of theories and straight up misinformation about the future of Gravity Falls are flying around the internet. It's just overall very chaotic, which makes sense because this is the biggest Gravity Falls has ever been online. I know that sounds crazy, but because books kept coming out every few years since the show ended, the fandom has never stayed dead for long. And the show has just gotten way more fans over the 2020s thanks to streaming and word of mouth. Kids who weren't even born 8 years ago get to grow up on it, and people of all ages who never checked it out for one reason or another finally gave it a shot. So what we're seeing right now is a fan base that's been growing for 12 years, reacting to a major new release that has a lot of teases and is leading to a lot of assumptions. So I wanted to set the record straight on the future of the series, while also throwing my own hat into the ring of speculation, because seriously, what the hell is a Season -1? Strap in, because this might be a bit of a long one. So I think the best place to start is actually with Alex Hirsch's Netflix situation, because it's something that's come up a lot in the midst of all these rumors, yet still not talked about enough. Although I do want to shout out the video, Why Season 3 is Legally Impossible, by the YouTuber Sold for bringing this to people's attention. And even if I have a different take on this, I do encourage you guys to check out this video after the fact, just so you have another perspective. You see, back in August 2018, 6 years ago now, Netflix announced that they had inked an overall deal with Alex Hirsch to exclusively develop new projects over at Netflix, specifically adult animated films and television series. Now, he wasn't the only one with a Netflix deal. Jorge Gutierrez, who created El Tigre and The Book of Life, had a deal announced in 2020 alongside screenwriter Michael Green, whose first project was the animated series Blue-Eyed Samurai. And while I'm not sure if he had an overall, Cartoon Network legend Craig McCracken also worked with Netflix for an extended period of time, creating the absolute banger that is Kid Cosmic and pitching other shows to Netflix that didn't go anywhere, but we'll touch on that later. Trust me, all of this is relevant information. Obviously, it's worth raising an eyebrow over the fact that it's been 6 years since Hirsch's deal was announced, and everyone who was announced to have a deal after him got at least one project out and available to stream as we speak, while all he has is an executive producer credit on Inside Job, which was canceled after 2 seasons. Or parts. So what exactly went wrong? Well, we could assume that Hirsch's own series was in development for quite a bit of time, which honestly tracks if you ever dove into the behind the scenes of Gravity Falls. They've discussed before in commentary tracks available on the complete series box set and Spotify that when they first started making the show, they were terrified of it turning out bad and would constantly show jokes to as many people as possible and wouldn't shy away from rewrites. And Hirsch has talked about many stories that got thrown out the window because they felt like they weren't working for one reason or another, like an episode about a twin convention, or the Stan and Wendy heist B-plot Hirsch has talked about at a con.
I saw you stealing chocolate bars and snow globes from the shack. And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry, Mr. Pines. I know I'm in trouble. You're gonna fire me. He's like, no, you've got a gift. You're the best thing I've ever seen.
Some episodes even had to be written at the last minute because a previous story wasn't working, like The Last Mabelcorn. Basically, Hirsch had a very particular vision for Gravity Falls that required a lot of trial, error, and time. Sadly, time wasn't on his side, as traditional television often means that one's vision might suffer under tight deadlines. Animation takes a long time to make, but the process of actually breaking a story and turning that into an outline or script is meant to be pretty quick. But Netflix gives their creatives a lot more time to cook. They could afford some trial and error, or maybe not. So if I had to guess, Hirsch spent a lot of time crafting and retooling his new show, pouring a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into making it happen, while refusing to settle for something he ultimately wouldn't be satisfied with, and Netflix was able to accommodate. After all, they have the creator of one of the biggest animated series ever working with them. But alas, Hirsch didn't have all the time in the world to bring his show to life, as Netflix animation more or less imploded in the latter half of 2022, seeing mass layoffs and cancellations, including the death of Inside Job. It was decided that Netflix would no longer pursue producing their animated projects in-house and instead return to their original approach to animation, with shows like BoJack Horseman, which was produced at Shadow Machine for Netflix instead of being made in-house. If you need proof they returned to these practices, then look no further than the upcoming Netflix series Gentry Chow vs. the Underworld, which is being produced at Titmouse. It was announced to be greenlit in early 2023, which means it was in development long before that, and because that big implosion happened around the fall, odds are Netflix intended to fully produce it, but then after figuring their shit out, they ended up just bringing in Titmouse to make it a reality. So I believe that Hirsch's new show is in a very specific kind of limbo, where Netflix wants to make things work. They want Alex's next show to be something that's real and tangible and available on their service. But now it's a matter of getting it out of development and finding a new studio to produce it at. But a lot of companies are hesitant to greenlight anything right now, with popular IP being prioritized. So it's safe to say that Hirsch's Netflix project isn't even in development hell, but development purgatory. It's also worth noting that Hirsch actually took Netflix out of his bio after having it in there for years that he was cooking up some new mischief over there, and he's not the only one. So honestly, I think we should collectively move on from the notion that he's actively working on something there. He was still in his Netflix deal as of last summer, as he said as much in an interview with That GF Fan and Hannah Hyperfixates that was recorded in July 2023. But being in a deal doesn't seem to indicate that things are actively happening. He might just be stuck in a contract and is waiting for it to expire so he can make his next move. Kinda ironic that the creator of Bill Cipher might have struck what turned out to be a bad deal. I'm sure this Netflix show is an option for him, but as it stands, it doesn't seem like it's something he's actively pursuing. Not to mention, he's been instrumental in the current campaign over at Animation Workers Ignited, voicing a character in their animated PSAs.
Wow, so this is where cartoons get made! Not anymore!
And in general, he's been very fired up about animation putting the power back in the hands of artists and not greedy corporations. Rightfully so. It may not be active commitments that's holding him back from doing more Gravity Falls, but the possibility that something new could happen, which is obviously more enticing than revisiting the only show under his belt in a medium that's a lot more ambitious than a book, which is actually a perfect segue into another thing that fans cite as a roadblock in the way of a third season: Hirsch's original thoughts on why the show was ending at season 2. The end of Gravity Falls was announced in the fall of 2015, in between the first two Weirmageddon episodes, with Alex Hirsch breaking the news on his Tumblr, and this post has been the definitive statement on his feelings towards a third season for nearly a decade. There's no easy way to say it, so I'm just gonna say it. Gravity Falls is coming to an end. There are 2 more episodes left: Weirmageddon 2 Escape from Reality and Weirmageddon 3, which will be our hour-long series finale. After that, Gravity Falls as we know it will be over. The first thing to know is that the show isn't being canceled. It's being finished. This is 100% my choice, and it's something I decided on a very long time ago. I always designed Gravity Falls to be a finite series about one epic summer, a series with a beginning, middle, and end. There are so many shows that go on endlessly until they lose their original spark, or mysteries that are canceled before they ever get a chance to pay off. But I wanted Gravity Falls to have a mystery that had a real answer, an adventure that had a real climax, and an ending that had a real conclusion for the characters I care so much about. This is very unusual in television and a pretty big experiment, and Disney, for their part, has been enormously supportive. I know that hits are rare in this business, and it's hard to let one of them go. So I'm grateful that this company has had the vision to let me start and end the show the way I always wanted to. Gravity Falls was never meant to be a series that goes on and on forever. It's meant to be an exploration of the experience of summer, and in a large sense, a story about childhood itself. The fact that childhood ends is exactly what makes it so precious, and why you should cherish it while it lasts. So pretty straightforward, right? The series always meant to be finite, and it was always meant to represent one summer. But a lot of fans know that this doesn't necessarily mean that the series was designed to be 2 seasons. While a 3rd season was never set in stone, early on, 3 seasons was the intention. A season for the beginning, a season for the middle, and a season for the end. Season 2 ending with Ford emerging out of the portal, and Weirmageddon happening at the end of season 3. Unfortunately, Hirsch was feeling extremely burnt out by the end of the 1st season, not just from showrunning, but from dealing with Disney. It's well known by now that he clashed with the Standards and Practices Department a lot, which he immortalized with a hilarious compilation of emails he received from them.
Page 16. S&P is not okay with saying the word Lucifer. please revise.
I see no reason to change this. The devil isn't real.
He had to be convinced to not throw in the towel and make at least one more season, which turned out to be one of the best seasons in television history. Though I won't lie, I always thought condensing the ideas for season 2 and 3 into one season was bittersweet, as although the pacing in the first half is perfect, in a world where the plot had to be stretched out for another half season until we got not what he seems sounds a little torturous, I still think the second half moves way too fast, and we needed some more time with Ford before the rift broke. But I bring all this up to point out that Gravity Falls wasn't intricately designed to be 40 episodes from day one. The final version of the show was very much a compromise between an exhausted creator and a company that wasn't ready to let go of an instant classic. And since Gravity Falls ended, not only has the animation industry changed, but the same people are in charge. The Disney branded television that exists today is not the Disney television animation that Hirsch left in 2016. If a new animated Gravity Falls project came into fruition, I'd like to think both Hirsch and the executives would know what they're getting into, and ideally, figure out a better workflow for everyone involved. But that's just wishful thinking. Disney aside though, we should also keep in mind that this blog post is from 9 years ago? Minds can change in a decade, like, we all know that, right? I don't think anyone watching this video feels the exact same way about everything in their life that they did back in 2015. Hirsch even leaves the door open a little bit at the end of the Tumblr post. Why don't we talk about that as much? Just because I finished the story I wanted to tell doesn't necessarily mean we'll never see Dipper, Mabel, and Stan again. It means that this chapter is closed, and that I, at least for now, am personally done telling their story. For now, y'all! For now! And this was after he threw out the idea of there being other projects in the same vein as Journal 3, which of course ended up being books like Lost Legends, Curse of the Time Pirates, and The Book of Bill. Also, we've already seen some post-Wyrmageddon stories through Lost Legends and The Book of Bill. So I'm not sure why we can eat all of this up, but the idea of getting a continuation in animated form is furiously shot down. I gotta be real though, while I do think Hirsch has been baiting us hard with things like the Parallel Pines getting their revenge on Dipper and Mabel, and Bill Cipher trying to escape rehab to reignite Wyrmageddon, both of which I'd love to see in a movie, I do think that we'll never get a traditional season 3, as in another 20 episodes that's structured in the same way as the first 2 seasons. Because if you ask me, the key to making another Gravity Falls show work is by not making it centered around Dipper and Mabel. Their story was the main series, a story about how daunting it is to grow up and face the future, which is why a season 3 wouldn't work. A movie or special, sure, that's something I've spent years advocating for. But season 3 implies 20 more kid-focused stories, and thus another uphill battle with the S&P. I can see why that's not too appealing to make. That doesn't mean Dipper and Mabel wouldn't appear in a project if it was set after the main series, just that they wouldn't be the stars. Like how Fiona and Cake was about Fiona and Cake, and Simon, with Finn and Jake making small appearances. In season 1 at least. I want more Finn in season 2 though, I won't even lie. But who would a new Gravity Falls project follow if not Dipper and Mabel? Well, creators tend to gravitate towards their older characters as they get up there in age, and Alex Hirsch seems very interested in getting to explore more of the Stan Bros. Not only do we get way more of them than Dipper or Mabel in the Book of Bill, but Hirsch has thrown out the idea of a Stan and Ford project before, which is really interesting when you consider that the new Book of Bill website, thisisnotawebsite.com, teases something that honestly, I can only really interpret as a prequel season, season -1. Thisisnotawebsite.com has a lot of interesting codes and Easter eggs, ranging from random gags to pretty engaging lore. But there's one thing that just has me scratching my head. Entering season 1 into the terminal will give you the message, season -1, Anti-Gravity Falls, which on its own definitely reads as a harmless gag, playing on the term anti-gravity. But if it was just a joke, then I'd expect them to commit to the bit and have season 2 give you season -2. But no, putting that in gives you season 1, and inputting season 3 gives you season 2. That doesn't seem like it's just a troll to me. That seems like an order to watch the series in. A chronological order. Season -1, or Anti-Gravity Falls, is the first season chronologically, which bumps season 1 up to season 2 status, and season 2 is effectively season 3. So stop asking for it. But alright. If season -1 is the first season, then where is it? What is it? Well, I think it's an idea for a prequel series. Another tease for a potential project, similar to the Parallel Pines setup, the adventures of Stan and Ford, long before Dipper and Mabel arrived in Gravity Falls. But how would that work when the two were separated for 30 whole years? Well, even longer than that actually. Well, it's called anti-Gravity Falls, isn't it? Dipper and Mabel were always together, solving mysteries around the town. So the reverse of that would be Stan and Ford's individual adventures, bringing to life entries from Journal 3 and the Book of Bill by depicting their events in animated form. Imagine a limited series the length of a normal Gravity Falls season, where the first half explores Ford's time living alone in Gravity Falls, working with McGucket, and of course, Bill Cipher, while Stan is living his life on the road, getting banned from every state and adopting numerous personas. Ford's episodes including things like how he and Fiddleford originally went up against a shapeshifter, or an expedition into the woods getting derailed by the Killbilly. And the sky's the limit with Stan's episodes. We know from the finale that anomalies aren't exclusive to Gravity Falls, so who's to say Stan wasn't having his own chaotic, otherworldly adventures in different states while evading the feds. The season can cut back and forth between the two, filling in a lot of gaps until the mid-season finale, where we get a fleshed out version of Stan and Ford's reunion and Ford getting sent flying into the Nightmare Realm. Then the second half of the season flips the script, as now Stan is the one living alone in Gravity Falls, trying to get the murder hut off the ground while encountering the town's weirdness. Stan was well aware that Gravity Falls was full of supernatural activity, so I think it'd be dope to see him go up against monsters we've never seen before, alongside some familiar faces, trying to get the portal working and giving us the moment he renamed the murder hut to the Mystery Shack. Make it super heartfelt, you know? And as that's going down, we're also following Ford's journey in the Nightmare Realm, encountering the Oracle, exploring different dimensions, and having his face-off with Bill Cipher, sprinkling in new lore along the way. Although Dipper and Mabel wouldn't be around, it still felt like Gravity Falls, if not an evolution of the series. For familiarity's sake, we'd still have most of the townsfolk, just younger, and with the Stan Bros being adult protagonists, the series could target an older demographic, which would allow them to push the envelope even further than the original did, cranking up the horror elements to 11 and giving us a new installment in the franchise that allows us to not only return to this world, but see a whole new side of it without disrupting the end of Weirdmageddon 3. This would be something I'd love to see, but again, I'm pretty sure it's just an idea at most. A Galactic Kids Next Door type beat. I can say with certainty that there's currently not a Gravity Falls revival in the works at Disney TVA. Like if there was, my nosy ass would have found out and kept my mouth shut instead of making this video. I don't share everything I know. And honestly, Disney would have announced it way ahead in advance to prevent it from leaking, like with Phineas and Ferb Season 5. We've known about it for like, what, 2 years? And it's probably not coming out until next year. A lot of people are doubtful that Alex Hirsch would ever work at Disney again, but let me reiterate, it's not the same studio that it was when he left. Not to mention, only popular IP is getting picked up right now. Craig McCracken said he pitched 16 projects at Netflix before returning to Cartoon Network, where he's been making the new Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends show and developing a Powerpuff Girls project. And he's not the only one who's had to revisit IP thanks to the current state of the industry. Rebecca Sugar's working on an Adventure Time movie. I'm sure that wasn't their first choice for a project in the post-Steven Universe world, though they do have that movie with Matt Brawley in the works. Showrunners in animation aren't loaded. People gotta eat. So while I'm not saying Hirsch would go back to Disney because he has no other options, I do think opportunities are a bit harder to come by for everybody right now, and I think it's been more than long enough to bring back the Pines family in animated form. The resurgence the series is having right now is on par with the 2020 blow-up of Avatar when that hit Netflix, and that led to Avatar Studios, who's making a buttload of shows and movies. Hirsch has been blown away by the Gravity Falls renaissance, and I'm sure the mouse is taking notes, so who knows? Keep making noise, and maybe it'll actually lead to something. Season -1? A movie? Or yeah, maybe just more books. I'm fine with books. Reading is rad, but maybe we should tone it down with the assertions that Season 3 is real because, it just ain't. I guess only time will tell. But as always, these are just my thoughts and I'd love to hear yours. Do we need a Gravity Falls Season 3 or a Season -1? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and keep the conversation going over on Twitter and Instagram at AwestruckVox and at RoundtableVids. Shout out to Hats Off Media for another dope thumbnail. Subscribe to his channel and check out his video so he can make his cartoon screen time. And if you enjoyed this video, please throw it a like and subscribe to the Roundtable for more great cartoon content. Thank you so much for watching and I hope you have an awesome day. Peace.